Thank you, Dr. Gupta. My apologies. I don't know why I was slotted in this particular session. My talk is more or less on how to prepare the teachers for tomorrow. Um, I want to introduce once again the Open University. As many of you may know, the Open University in the UK is one of the world's first and the largest universities. There's a joke in the UK which goes on like this, that if you walk into any street in the UK, you would find at least one person studying in the Open University. So although Indira Gandhi National Open University in India is very large, I know that there are about 2 million students studying, but a country of 62 million, a student in every street is not a bad thing. But what difference does Open University make in the lives of those in the UK is that it allows them to study at their own pace, study the subjects that they want, and it actually breaks all the stereotypes. So the distance education movement around the world was in one way or the other influenced by the Open University. And I'm glad that this university is now in India in the form of support to the Indian system. So as you can see, the mission of the Open University is to be open to people, places, methods, and ideas. So it's not restrictive. It's not a university that asks you to follow a particular path, an academic stream. You can mix and match your own subjects. If you are pursuing humanities and you want to pursue biotechnology, Open University allows you to do that. In quite a few occasions, in many systems, it is not possible. So why we are here as Open University? The Indian and the UK governments agreed at some stage in April 2006 to help each other in areas of excellence. And this was a kind of a UK-India partnership in education. And they found that concentrating on education was a good idea. So when David Cameron was here 2 years ago, this initial agreement of collaborating for 5 years was extended for another 5 years. So the collaboration between India and the UK in education exchange and exchange of ideas, research, and technical assistance would continue till 2016. So when the UK government went back, they scouted for institutions that can offer some support to the Indian problems. And here is where they identified as one of the problems, the challenges that India was facing was in the area of teacher education. And they chose the Open University in the UK to come and intervene as a bilateral agreement. So what are the problems? I don't need to preach or speak to this slide at all because many of you are aware of this situation. This morning, Ms. Dr. Rashmi Shami very categorically mentioned that access is not a problem. People are able to access, but I'm sure if you consider this particular state and certain states for say tribal population or population that comes from remotest locations, access still is a problem, but overall it appears to the government of India that access is not a major problem. But as it's enshrined in the curriculum framework, also the curriculum framework for teacher education 2009, as well as the RTE, the focus is more on equity and inclusion. So it is very clear that of the millions of students, 80% of those are studying in the government schools, and the quality remains as a huge concern. And when it comes to Madhya Pradesh, you can see that you have 50 districts, 318 blocks, you have 436,000 teachers who work in 137,000 schools. Now, there are 1.13 lakh schools with 85% of your schools have Pakka buildings. I think you should be very happy in the state that as compared to many other states, you are doing really, really well. And at least you have 2 to 6 rooms on an average. And many schools have been established in the last 10 years. So that means 16% of your schools in Madhya Pradesh are constructed with nice brick and mortar with conditions that are conducive. But that said, when it comes to teachers and teacher educators, the statistics is not telling a good story. 13% of the schools have head teachers who are qualified. 16% of your schools have only single teachers, whereas 55% of schools have more than 1:35 people teacher ratio. Although 92% of the schools are utilizing the TLM grant, only 80% of these are visited by the Circle Resource Center coordinators and Cluster Resource Center coordinators. You can see that when it comes to ICTs, only 2% of the primary schools have any sort of ICT in Madhya Pradesh of the overall average of 6.23. And school inspectors do not have the time to visit schools to offer the support that they could offer. So you can see that of the 317,000 teachers who are actually in place today, only 46% of them received some sort of in-service training, which means a good number of 54% of the teachers have not received any training. And of 160,000 of these are below 35. You can imagine a person below 35 who is really at the prime age of his or her life is put in a situation with not much training offered, not much support offered, at the same time is expected to deliver goods on a contractual basis with very limited pay. So that's the situation, and this is where the foundation lies, right? This is how we want to build the future of India, particularly states like UP, MP, and so on. So it's not a really good situation. 72% of teachers have no professional qualification, whereas when it comes to academic qualification, more than half of your teachers have a PG, a MA or MSc. When it comes to professional qualification, only 28% of your teachers have some sort of professional qualification. So both pre-service, in-service seem to be suffering in the state. Now, when it comes to the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Ms. Shami was here earlier. The 20 days compulsory training under the RTE that were to be offered to the in-service teachers, only 10 to 12 days are, many Abhiyans are able to complete around the country. It's not because they don't want to utilize the thousands of crores that they are getting. It's simply because they don't have the resource people, they don't have the curriculum, they don't have enough material, enough trainers trained to train others. So what happens, the cluster resource centers, which are supposedly the venue for teacher training, have become godowns, at least for 1 month, for distribution of textbooks. And the CRC coordinators also are responsible for conducting sports events under the RTE and also the new framework. They also have to ensure a number of things, equity to inclusion to all observing all sorts of days at the circle level. So it becomes really difficult for the CRC coordinators to focus on the academic part of it, the curriculum part of it, the pedagogical part of support that they were expected to offer to the teachers. Whereas when it comes to inspection, they all seem to be doing at least one part well. They are counting well. They are able to go and see if there are toilets in the school, if there are rooms in good conditions. So the academic part is neglected, whereas the administrative part is really taken care of. Now the NUPA releases good statistics. And if you look at the statistics, the quality of statistics that comes from Madhya Pradesh, a place like West Bengal, is quite high. People at the community level are able to collect statistics, feed data, send it online through email and other mechanisms. So the machinery is well oiled. You have a system in place, but when it comes to curriculum support, pedagogical support, the actual training that teachers need, in the earlier slide I showed that a number of schools have single teachers. If these teachers were to be supported, there's hardly any system. Now the diets and the CRTs in many of these states also have difficulties. If they focus on in-service, they tend to lose on pre-service. If they tend to focus on pre-service, they don't have a strategy for in-service. And they are limited with faculty. And there is, in certain states, the teacher trainers, who are the resource people, are under a political system, in the sense that the teacher unions handpick people who are deployed as resource people. So if you look at the overall situation in the country, teacher education is one area we seem to be wanting, we have an opportunity, I would say otherwise. Now recognizing this particular domain, area of challenge, the Indian government approached the UK government to provide some support. And as you would appreciate, in many of the UK schools, particularly the government schools, what they call the public schools, are well functioning. The headmasters and the teachers of the public schools, public there is government. The government schools in the UK are paid better than the doctors in their NHS system. So the position accorded to the teachers in the UK is really good. That's because the country recognizes education and teacher education very seriously. So there is an opportunity here for the Open University to bring the best of the expertise, as they demonstrated in South Africa in a recent project, also in Bangladesh, where they are training millions of teachers in English proficiency. They have come to India. Just 2 weeks ago, we got the approval from the Indian government to actually program in 7 states in India, which includes Madhya Pradesh, the other states being Assam, West Bengal, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Orissa, Karnataka. So we would be working with the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and RMSA officials, also working alongside the existing teacher training system in these states to improve the quality of teacher education overall in India. But that doesn't stop us from working with other institutions. We have commitment to work with 7 states in India, but we are also looking for partners in the private sector, among the NGOs, and also actors like the Indira Gandhi National Open University and any other state other than these 7 states would want to take advantage of this approach. So you can see only 4 things we are trying to do. We are trying to put together a network of teacher education organizations so that they can talk to one another, they can collaborate with each other. We are also into developing locally appropriate activity-based, what we call the teacher development units, which would be available to every teacher, 1 million of these, who can actually use as a reference point to teach a particular topic in a subject. So if they are finding it difficult to teach a particular topic in, say, primary science or secondary mathematics, these teacher development units will assist them with films. So somebody this morning was mentioning, beautifully describing how the body parts were taught in a particular school, and this is best practice in a way, because appropriate practice otherwise. It takes account of the resources available within the constraints of that teacher who ought to teach this particular subject or this topic, but with any object or any aid, teaching, training aid available. So in this case, she used a kind of a sand pit as a good opportunity to explain. So if you go around the country, there are good teachers. Teachers are really good. The problem is the system is not allowing them to perform optimally, and the system has also brought in its own trouble by recruiting a majority of community-based workers as teachers in order to meet the number. So we are in a situation where a large number of teachers, although with good intent to teach, who are dedicated, who are paid very low salaries, yet they are performing. So how we can assist them is by giving them the right kind of material and the teaching aids and the learning methods that they could use in their daily practice appropriately within their conditions. So we are developing, going around and looking for suitable best practices which we film in 2-3 minutes clips, which are embedded into these teacher development units, which are made available to the teacher educators and the teachers themselves, so that they can practice in their daily life. And also, because this is a grant, accountable grant to the UK government, we have a rigorous monitoring and evaluation so that we know for sure, at least in the first phase, we do the job well enough to meet the needs of the demand and the opportunity there exists in India. So I would spend a minute actually showing how our material basically goes around. We develop both audio material as well as video material, which could be put in a kind of a SIM card of a kind of a cheap phone. This is a 790 rupees phone bought at Future Bazaar, one of those stores, where I have put in the kind of English in action samples, which the teachers in Bangladesh are actually using in their daily practice. So I'm actually playing a small clip, a classroom audio, which you can hear.
English in action. English for today, class 1, lesson 2, day 1.
So this is one example of how audio technique is used, and we also have videos that can be uploaded on mobile phones of this nature, which enable teachers at their own leisure to basically play as many number of times possible, which gives them a kind of a teaching method or a technique that discusses their challenge as well as the problems. So the way we organize our teacher development unit is that we pick up a problem and we discuss that problem. We discuss in the context in which people actually now practice, but also we show the alternative methods of teaching through practical examples, which are also available in video format for them to. So all these things complement their existing textbook-based teaching methods, but all that we are trying to do is to help them by picking those most difficult but at the same time most important topics in each of these subjects that the teachers find it difficult to teach, and we treat them with different approaches. And these are made available through the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan to the teachers and teacher educators in multiple formats. If Akhilesh Yadav in UP is going to distribute tablets, we may preload these in tablets. If some other government is giving desktops, so it be. But at the end of the day, we feel that the material electronically produced can travel to teachers at their pace and at their time. They would be in a position to use it.